us. Before we get going, I would like to recognize some of the officials that are with us today. Joining us are Chairman of the Legislature, Terry Bernardo, Legislator Wayne Harris, Legislator Mary Warrow, our District Attorney, Holly Carnwright, our Comptroller, Elliot Auerbach, and I see Town Supervisor Carl Chipman out here as well. Carl, how are you doing? Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, this is one of those moments where, again, I'm so glad to see the changes that are going on in Albany under Governor Cuomo. Not only was the state of the state inspirational and effective, what he has done is said simply, I'm going to put the weight of the office of the governor behind getting this message out to the people. Really, what are my initiatives, what are my priorities, and what are the things that I think are important? And he's shown the level of commitment to doing that by sending high-level people from his cabinet out to be able to speak to the people of New York State. Today is just one of those privileged events that we get to have and host right here, and I'm glad that we've been able to have that. So, without further ado, I would like to introduce the Commissioner of the DOT, someone who is absolutely moving New York State forward, and I promise I won't say the words Tappan Zee Bridge today. Commissioner of the DOT, ladies and gentlemen, Joan McDonald.
Lower the microphone a little bit. Good morning, everybody. It really is a privilege to be here in Ulster County, and thank you, County Executive, for having us into your home. To pick up on the message that the County Executive said, Governor Cuomo has directed all of his commissioners to go out into the state and not only be conversant in our individual commission and department areas. I'm the Commissioner of Transportation, but to understand his message. And his message is getting New York State back on track, working with our counties and municipalities across the state to make that happen. I started just about a year ago. I started on February 1st of 2011. On the day that Governor Cuomo gave his first budget message. I had worked on New York State legislative staff in the 80s and early 90s, and it was thrilling to be back, and is thrilling to be back in Albany and see the changes. You can feel it in the air, and I've done several of these forums after the budget, after the legislative session, in Oswego, New York, in Canandaigua, New York, in Niagara Falls, in Long Island, and you can really sense a change. And the message I'm going to deliver here today, which is Governor Cuomo's State of the State message, which he delivered last week, highlights that much has been done, and we have great momentum, but much more needs to be done. So we start out, and moving forward on the PowerPoint. I guess we're going to turn off the lights. Okay. Make it a little bit, no, don't fall asleep, anybody. I know it's early, but it's Friday, and the sun is shining, right? So, 2011, we had an extremely successful year. We began the year by closing a $10 billion deficit with no gimmicks, and it was done on time. After 20 years of failure, we enacted the first ever property tax cap. The state closed 3,800 prison beds because we finally recognized that prisons are not economic development programs. We eliminated the MTA payroll tax for most small businesses, which are the backbone of our economy. We launched new economic development policy with our Open for Business campaign. We passed an affordable energy policy after a decade of trying, Article 10. We provided desperately needed flood relief. We passed ethics reform and attacked chronic high unemployment among disadvantaged youth with an innovative jobs program. We restored New York's reputation as the progressive capital of the nation. We passed marriage equality for all New Yorkers, and we did it together. For decades, millions of New Yorkers have been burdened with an unfair tax code. Under the old system, whether a person made $20,000 or $20 million, they paid the same rate. Under Governor Cuomo's leadership, he determined it was just wrong. Last month, Governor Cuomo and the legislature brought fairness to the state of New York. Our principle is simple. The more you earn, the more you make, the higher rate you pay. Because New York says that a flat tax is not a fair tax. We added new brackets for the middle class and for high earners. And we stimulated our economy by cutting taxes for people earning $40,000 to $300,000 because the middle class has suffered silently for far too long. Today, the middle class pays the lowest tax rate in 58 years. That was a huge accomplishment. Just think, 58 years was a long, long time ago. It was 1953. Thomas Dewey was our governor, for those of us who were around then. The first color televisions were being sold. Jackie Robinson played second base for the Brooklyn Dodgers. The first Corvette was created. And in 1953, Governor Cuomo wasn't even born yet. He was a twinkle in his father's eye. We have accomplished much, there is no doubt. But as I said in the beginning, there is also no doubt that we have only just started. Last Wednesday, Governor Cuomo laid out an aggressive three-part plan. Part one is the next phase in our economic blueprint for growth. Part two is a reimagined government that can make our plans a reality. And part three is a New York vision for a progressive future. Our economic future. Let's begin by building on our economic strength. New York is an international destination location. Tourism is at record numbers. Tourists spent $50 billion in New York State in 2010. We know that if we build it, they will come because New York is the place to be, whether it's New York City, right here in the beautiful Catskills, or the beautiful Finger Lakes of upstate New York. But we must stay ahead of the competition. Convention centers are important generators of economic activity. New York needs a state-of-the-art venue to be competitive. The Jacob Javits Center on Manhattan's West Side is obsolete, and it is not large enough to be a top-tier competitor in today's marketplace. We rank 12th in the nation in terms of size of convention center space. That is unacceptable. Under Governor Cuomo's leadership, we will build the largest convention center in the nation. We are currently pursuing a $4 billion private investment at Aqueduct Racetrack. To complete this vision at the Aqueduct Racetrack venue and generate tens of thousands of jobs. The regional councils exceeded all expectations across the state and redefined the way New York invests. I know that firsthand. I was very fortunate. Governor Cuomo selected me along with three others, the former budget director, Dal Forsyth, and the former Deputy Secretary in Health and Human Services, Walter Broadnax, to review the 10 economic development plans by the regions. And it clearly was and is a transformative initiative. The governor will launch a $200 million second competitive round of regional economic development awards this year to keep that momentum going. We have long flirted and dallied with another potential economic engine, casino gaming. It's time we confronted reality. This was an eye-opener to me. It's not a question of whether we should have gaming in New York. The fact is, we already do. The fact is, we have 29,000 electronic gaming machines already in our state. That's more than Atlantic City. We are also surrounded by gaming. States across our borders have legalized casino gaming. Massachusetts just legalized casinos. They get the tourism, the revenue, and the jobs that belong here in New York State. From Governor Cuomo's perspective, it's about jobs, 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 not about cards and chips. The over $4 billion in economic activity that casino gaming can bring will be important to our state. Governor Cuomo is proposing that we amend the Constitution so that we can do gaming right. The governor will work with the legislature this year to take the first step. We also need to rebuild our infrastructure, near and dear to my heart. The governor is creating the New York Works Fund and Task Force. It will be a group of leading public and private experts to coordinate, leverage, and accelerate all capital programs throughout the state. There is currently little coordination. As the governor said in his State of the State, and I know only too well, 32% of our bridges are deficient, 40% of our roads are rated fair or poor and getting worse, and 83% of our parks and a majority of DEC's major dams are in disrepair. And I know here in Ulster County and in the Catskill region, the impact of Hurricane Irene and Tropical Storm Lee on our dam and stream system was severely felt by the residents of the Catskills. I saw it firsthand. We will improve or replace more than 100 bridges, like the Tappan Zee Bridge that we've been talking and planning for 15 years. It's time to start building. We will repair 2,000 miles worth of roads. That's Buffalo to New York City, 5 times over. We will finance upgrades to 90 municipal water systems, improve 48 state parks and historic sites visited by over 37 million people each year, and in the wake of Hurricane Irene and Tropical Storm Lee, we will repair 114 flood control projects and dams. Next, we need to power our economic growth. Governor Cuomo is proposing an energy highway system. We currently have supply upstate, in western New York, and in the North Country. We have tremendous need in downstate. So, in Governor Cuomo's mind, let's just connect the dots and make it happen. The state will create a master plan and issue an RFP. We believe that private companies will bid and build over $2 billion in infrastructure to complete this system and build the capacity to supply our customers. And that means jobs for New Yorkers. Part 2 of the 3-part plan. To tackle this ambitious agenda, we need a government that can make it happen. We need a government that performs better and costs less, because a government that works for the people must make a long-term commitment to fiscal discipline. Our state is more competitive when we are reducing taxes and cutting costs. That means holding the line this year and agreeing to close the remaining $2 billion budget deficit with no new taxes and no new fees. On Tuesday, Governor Cuomo will unveil his 2013 budget, which goes from April 1st, 2012 through March 31st, and he will be doing it without proposing no new taxes or no new fees. The agreement that was reached in December on the personal income tax reform went a long way towards dealing with that deficit. It also means enacting mandate relief, and the governor recognizes that this is still a very top priority with local governments across the state. By next year, pension costs for schools, state and local governments will have increased more than 100% since 2009. We need to reform the pension system, and we need to create a Tier 6. We need to continue improving our local governments and the state and local relationship that builds on that partnership. The property tax has worked. It has forced fiscal discipline and stimulated a citizen dialogue. But we do need to continue to do something about mandates. The Mandate Relief Council that was created last year will begin its work this month. The council will hold public hearings to facilitate robust discussion on the pros and cons of mandates. Mandates were generally put in place to deal with an issue. The governor will direct the council to issue a package of recommendations by the end of the session, and he will request a yea or nay vote by the legislature on the full package so the public knows where the governor's office and the legislative branch stands. The future of our state depends on our public schools. A strong, effective school system is the hallmark of a healthy democracy. We have learned that everyone in public education has a lobbyist. Superintendents have lobbyists. Principals have lobbyists. Teachers have lobbyists. The school boards have lobbyists. Maintenance personnel have lobbyists. Even the bus drivers have lobbyists. Who's the only group without a lobbyist?
The kids.
There you go, the students. Governor Cuomo has learned his lesson, and he has decided to take on a second job. He will be the lobbyist in chief for the students in the state of New York. He will wage a campaign to put students first. And he will constantly remind us that the purpose of public education is to help children grow, not to grow the public education bureaucracy. He will not rest until the state's public education system educates every child to their potential. Because we cannot have a system that spends more money than any other state and only ranks 38th in graduation rates. Not acceptable. We need major reform. We must focus on increasing teacher accountability and student achievement. We will achieve a real teacher evaluation system. Governor Cuomo will appoint a bipartisan education commission to work with the legislature to recommend reforms in key areas to improve efficiency. Public education is a mission that we cannot fail. We cannot fail our children, and we will not fail. Another core mission of government is public safety. During this year's floods, we learned the hard way that we must do a better job to anticipate and be prepared for emergencies. Governor Cuomo wants the best state emergency management operation in the country. To that end, he has appointed the right person to lead this effort, Jerry Hauer. Jerry is an emergency management expert who served federally as the head of the biodefense program at U.S. Health and Human Services, and he ran the first Office of Emergency Management Operations in the city of New York. And I had the privilege of working with Jerry when he was in the city of New York. I was a deputy commissioner at New York City DOT, and Governor Cuomo has made an excellent choice, and his commitment, both the governor's and Jerry's, is to make sure the relationship and the coordination between the state and local governments in responding to emergencies is second to none. We need that new statewide network of emergency responders who are prepared for anything, anytime. We all know the financial crisis is also taking a terrible toll on our homeowners. Banks are unwilling or unable to negotiate loans, and their foreclosure practices are wrong and illegitimate. Did I skip one? Did I go ahead? Yes, I did. Okay, got a little out of order there. This year, the newly created Department of Financial Services will include a foreclosure relief unit to provide counseling and mediation services to help New Yorkers stay in their homes. We need to resolve this crisis. Protecting tenants must also be an equally high priority. Last year, we enacted the strongest rent regulation in 30 years. This year, we must make sure those laws and regulations are enforced. While most landlords follow the law, there are some bad actors, and they must get the message. We will create a tenant protection unit in the Division of Homes and Community Renewal to investigate fraud and prosecute unscrupulous landlords. Last year, Governor Cuomo created an MWBE team. I'm proud to be a member of that team, dedicated to expanding economic opportunities for minority and women-owned business enterprises. In this economy, it's hard for everyone to get credit, but it is especially tough for small and minority and women-owned businesses. This year, we are addressing the problem by extending credit that will give MWBE contractors the backing they need. The program will support at least $200 million in contracting for MWBE firms for several years. We will hit our target for doubling MWBE participation in state contracting to 20%. Last year, we enacted New York State SUNY 2020 for the 4 university centers in Albany, Binghamton, Buffalo, and Stony Brook. This year, Governor Cuomo is offering the other campuses, SUNY's 60 other campuses, the ability to compete for 3 $20 million challenge grants. The challenge grants are the way to go. But for all of our progress, there are still some basic wrongs that we need to right. There is never an excuse for letting any child in New York go to bed hungry. Unfortunately, statewide, 1 in 6 children live in homes without enough food on the table. 30% of eligible New Yorkers, over 1.4 million people, are not enrolled in the food stamp program. We leave over $1 billion in federal funds unclaimed every year. We must remove barriers to participate and eliminate the stigma of food stamps to increase participation. We must stop fingerprinting working families with children for food. To protect all New Yorkers, Governor Cuomo will propose that we expand our DNA data bank. The DNA data bank helps establish guilt or innocence, and it has provided leads in over 2,700 convictions. Equally important, it has led to 27 exonerations of the wrongfully accused. But currently, we only collect DNA for about half of the crimes on the books. Let's collect DNA on all crimes so that justice is done for all. Governor Cuomo wants to put New York on the cutting edge in criminal justice. He wants us to become the first state in the nation to collect DNA evidence on all crimes. He wants to lead the way once again. Governor Cuomo will also create the Tax Reform and Fairness Commission to find ways to close tax loopholes, simplify the tax code, and improve New York's business climate, particularly for small businesses. In closing, by all accounts, wrong way again, campaign finance reform, it's time we make sure that all New Yorkers have an equal voice in our political process. We must enact campaign finance reform. The governor will introduce a bill that will implement public financing, lower contribution limits, and increase enforcement at the Board of Elections. In closing, by all accounts, last year was an historic success, something we should all be proud of. But there is much more to do. Together we can do it because we know who we are, we know we are New York, and let's make 2012 as successful as 2011. It has been my privilege to represent Governor Cuomo here today in Ulster County on a sunny Friday. Didn't know whether it was going to be sunny when we started out. It is my pleasure to be here with all of you. Thank you, and we continue to look forward to move the agenda ahead. Thank you.
Now, at this point, if anybody wants to take an opportunity to do some Q&A, if they have any questions for the commissioner, please don't hesitate. Anyone? Wow, that was one thorough.
Okay.
I'm thinking that's one thorough presentation. Carl?
As far as mandate relief, I have
Yes.
a couple of questions. You discussed having a mandate council.
Mm-hmm.
Who's going to be on that commission?
The governor will make appointments as well as the legislative leaders. Last year, we did enact some mandate relief. I think the value is about 200 million savings across the state. I think, as all of you know, and as the governor knows, one of the biggest issues is the pension issue for local governments. So there will be discussions on that. Some of the other mandates tied to environmental. So the council will look at all of those and have hearings.
I'm hoping that some members of local government are put on that council. I think you need to hear from us.
I think so too, and we'll bring that suggestion back to the governor.
Also, another form of mandate release, social services. In Ulster County, safety net is paid by the municipalities.
Right.
Last year, we went from a 50-50 split to 71-29 split.
Okay.
And we got hit with the 2% tax cap
At the same time.
We need
Understood.
immediate relief there.
We'll bring that back
Thank
to the
you.
governor. You're welcome.
Yes, good morning, Commissioner.
Good morning.
I was wondering if you could tell us anything about upcoming DOT projects in Ulster County.
I can't off the top of my head, but Bill Gordon is here from Region 8. If he has them, we'll talk to you afterwards. Right now, the priority of the governor and the priority of the department is infrastructure. And the governor announced in December an additional $1 billion in accelerated projects that we will be doing across the state. As I mentioned in the presentation, there will be over 100 bridge replacements, there will be over 2,000 miles of pavement, and then there will be our traditional projects that we do. In December, I reviewed all of the regional capital plan updates, and we're in the process of finalizing that now. But there will be, when you take the additional $700 million, which is about DOT's share of the $1 billion, on top of our statewide program of $1.5 billion, our overall program will be approximately $2 billion across the state.
I mean, Harv, just so you know, I was going to ask when we left here if all that would be spent right
Right
here in
here.
Ulster County.
Yeah.
So now you beat me to the punch.
You don't ask.
Michael.
That's right.
the governor's agenda is truly impressive and what you've accomplished. But there's an area which the government did not mention at all, and it's critical to the economic well-being as well as the well-being of families, and that's early childhood development. We competed for Rise to the Top money, and we came in 23rd. That means that we didn't get it, and we won't get the next round. The governor needs to invest some money to start the institution of quality stars. In the last 6 years, the quality of child care in the state has declined significantly with the advent of legally exempt care, which has no requirements or training. So I would like to see the governor add that to his educational initiative. Without it, we will have 6-year-olds that are failing out of first grade.
I'm not sure what the full agenda is for education, but that is also a very valid point. I think the governor truly recognizes that education does not start in kindergarten or pre-K. It starts in early childhood, but it's a very valid point, and we'll continue to put that on the agenda.
Thank you.
I'm not sure if you're aware, but in our county, we just had a major food stamp scam. So I think it's wonderful that you're making it more available, but I was just wondering on the flip side, what's being done to prevent the fraud?
My understanding, and the governor and his staff have gone into this in a little bit of detail, so I'm not fully familiar with all the issues, but that with the electronic monitoring and the matching of a lot of the fraud was tied to Social Security and having the information at hand. I'm not sure the specific issues here in Ulster County, but that the increased enforcement and ability to monitor where there is duplication and where an eligible individual doesn't get the food stamps but somebody else does are far improved than they were in the past.
Okay, someone they were going to a local gas station and getting the money back in cash,
yeah, and not using it for food, right.
The Ulster County's really benefited from the state's TANF dollars for summer youth employment program for many years, and we have a very successful program that's been put forth. Is there any indication as to that, the remainder of that funding in the budget in the upcoming year, and just if you could pass along that is really very important for us in terms of training our youth and to make them work ready, which then in turn helps with our economic development community.
Well, I mentioned in the presentation that one of the governor's initiatives that he announced in December was a $200 million program for disadvantaged youth in job training. So how that complements TANF, the details.
For urban youth.
Right, but the details are still being worked out, but we'll make sure to bring that back to the appropriate folks.
Thank you.
Steve?
The governor's State of the State was really pretty robust on education, on building new convention centers, but it didn't mention healthcare at all. Maybe you could comment on the governor's agenda for healthcare.
I know Dr. Shaw, our Commissioner for Health, is there. The two priorities on the health front are the Medicaid reform team and their initiatives. That's number one. The specific issues I would have to go back to them on. And number two is making sure that we establish the insurance exchange as part of federal healthcare reform to make sure that happens. So healthcare is clearly front and center, and just because it wasn't mentioned in the State of the State does not mean that it is not a top priority of the governor. A year ago, if you remember, one of his initial acts was to establish the Medicaid reform team and look at ways to make sure that we do not diminish health care, but do it in an efficient way. So their initiatives are being rolled out also.
On the economic development front, certainly the governor has done a lot to ramp that up as the top issue. I appreciate that as someone on the front lines of that area. But I'm wondering if the substitution of the Excelsior program for the old Empire Zones program might not be missing one key element, and that is an aggressive investment tax credit program. We have really lost a tool that we use to compete with other states, and that is that very aggressive 8 to 10% investment tax credit for truly job-generating investments. And I'm wondering if the governor would consider looking again to that. Like, obviously, it costs money.
It does.
But the money
It does.
is generated by the projects themselves, so that's something to look at.
Yes, and I'm very familiar with tax credit programs. Before I came to New York, I was the Commissioner of Economic Development in New York, and I mean, you're right. You have to invest to get the credit, so it is a good way to promote economic activity. So I'll talk to my counterpart Kenneth Adams and see what they have on the horizon for that.
He's heard my harangue on
Okay.
Is the $2 billion in infrastructure spending, does that include the Tappan Zee Bridge?
It does not. The Tappan Zee Bridge is a standalone project.
And where's the funding going to come for the new Tappan Zee Bridge?
Right now, in December, the state brought on, State DOT and the Thruway Authority, a new economic advisor to look at ways to finance the bridge, and those evaluations are happening right now, and we will shortly have a plan on how to finance the Tappan Zee Bridge.
And there's passenger rail service going to be coming across there?
The plan, as was announced on October 11th, for those of you that are familiar or not, the prior environmental impact statement looked at the 30-mile corridor from Suffern to Portchester to replace, and it was always the plan to replace the bridge first. In October, we made a decision along with US DOT to rescind the 30-mile corridor and replace the bridge, but we are replacing the bridge in a manner so that it does not preclude transit. And what that means is that the footing on both the Rockland County side and the Westchester County side will be appropriately placed so that mass transit can go down the middle, either in between the spans or under a span. And the weight-bearing capacity across the length of the new bridge will have the capability of carrying transit, whether it's bus rapid transit or commuter rail.
Are there any plans for passenger rail to come through this area, through Ulster County?
At this point, there are not.
Yes.
Commissioner, I don't have a question, I have a thank you. As a county that experienced its worst natural disaster, the response by the department and the response by the state as a whole to bring the commissioners down, to see our roads fixed as fast as they were fixed, to look at the innovative use of community development block grant funds and Main Street funds, to help our farmers, to help our main streets, we say thank you very much.
Thank you. That is very much appreciated. It was, the local government employees, state employees, contracting community, everybody really did step up to the plate and showed, we were all proud to be New Yorkers in that response.
Now, we have time for one more question, but before we go there, Carl, just to answer to your question, the New York State Association of Counties, as well as the Town Association, is pushing extremely hard for involvement on mandate relief, any mandate relief efforts. Obviously, we understand Medicaid plays a role in that, and there are many others as well.
Regarding economic development, I'm hoping that the governor will review the seeker process in terms of that, because the DEC has undertaken small fixes by looking at revising the forms. Regionally here, I don't know if you're aware, Pattern for Progress partnered with Scenic Hudson and the DEC to promote revisions, but unless the legislation is looked at, the policy changes are not going to solve the problem.
And the governor has committed to doing that. So that is one of the areas where the regional council will take a look at.
Again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us today. I really appreciate this. And again, a special thank you to you, Commissioner. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, there is. Yes. Okay. Happy New Year. Yes, you too.
Hey, Frank. Good to see you again so soon. Donaldson
I was admiring your business purchase and was flipping through the concepts. It's a great business. It was, yeah. It works. Good to see you. Thank you very much.
Oh, yes, how are you? Nice to see you. Working hard.
Good for you. Cheer it. Gracious.
No, it was good. Hi, Vicky. How are you? Good to see you, Jerry.